Ladies and gentlemen, sudden mental confusion and spiritual heaviness is one of the clearest signs that something unseen may be pressing against your life. It's not the normal tiredness that comes from a busy day, nor the mental fog that follows a lack of sleep or stress. This confusion appears abruptly, without any natural cause, and it carries a strange weight that sits upon your mind like a shadow blocking the light. You sense it the moment it arrives. Your thoughts begin to scatter, your clarity is shaken, and your ability to focus disappears as if something invisible has placed a hand across your mind to interrupt your flow. In your spirit, you feel as though a cloud has descended, not outside you, but inside you. This kind of confusion is often accompanied by a heaviness that makes even simple tasks feel burdensome. You may wake up in the morning already drained before the day has begun. Your heart feels unsettled, your emotions become cloudy, and your spirit senses a pressure that you cannot explain. You try to pray, but your mind drifts. You try to read the word, but nothing sticks. You attempt to concentrate on your responsibilities, but everything feels unusually difficult, as though your thoughts are walking through deep water instead of moving freely. This heaviness is not natural, it is spiritual. When such confusion comes suddenly, especially when it disrupts your peace, your direction, or your ability to hear God clearly, it is often a sign that a spiritual influence is trying to interfere with your inner life. The enemy knows that the mind is the battlefield of destiny. If he can cloud your judgment, weaken your focus, or decrease your spiritual sensitivity, he can slow you down and separate you from the clarity that God has given you. When someone attempts to project negative spiritual energy, manipulation, or witchcraft toward you, one of the earliest effects can be this mental disturbance. It attacks thoughts, emotion, and perception all at once because it is designed to suffocate spiritual awareness. You may notice that while everything around you is the same, your inner atmosphere feels different. Simple decisions seem complicated. You question things you were once certain about. You feel an unusual level of irritation, frustration, or mental exhaustion. Your motivation fades. You may even feel disconnected from your purpose or unsure of your next step. None of these feelings match your circumstances, which is why the confusion stands out as so strange. It is not responding to life. It is reacting to something that has approached your life spiritually. This heaviness can also manifest physically. You may feel pressure on your head, tension in your chest, or a weight in your body that has no medical explanation. It feels like something is pressing down on you from the inside. You try to shake it off, distract yourself, rest, or change your environment, but the heaviness follows you because it is not external, it is spiritual. You sense that something is not normal. You feel out of alignment with peace. You feel as though your mind has stepped into a fog that you never invited. People under this type of spiritual pressure often experience a block in their creativity, a slowdown in their productivity, or an unusual resistance in everything they try to do. They begin tasks but cannot complete them. Their thoughts jump around instead of connecting. Even their emotions can shift without reason, moving from calm to anxious, from steady to overwhelmed. When you try to search for a reason, you find none, because the origin is not natural. It is unseen. This confusion also affects spiritual sensitivity. You feel as though your prayers are not flowing, your discernment is dimmed, or your inner connection to God feels interrupted. This does not mean God has moved away from you. It means something is trying to interfere with your awareness of His presence. When spiritual heaviness presses on the mind, it often attempts to suffocate prayer, worship, and spiritual hearing. You sense a barrier, as though your spirit is trying to rise, but something is pulling it downward. This is why sudden mental confusion and heaviness is not something to ignore. It is a spiritual signal. It is an indicator that your spirit is picking up interference. It is a sign that something is attempting to cloud your clarity, burden your heart, and weaken your inner strength. It is the enemy's attempt to disrupt your alignment with purpose, peace, and the presence of God. A natural fear or anxiety that appears out of nowhere is one of the most telling indicators that something spiritual is pressing against your life. It is not the ordinary fear that rises from a real situation, nor the normal anxiety that comes from responsibilities or emotional strain. This fear arrives suddenly, without warning, without logic, and without connection to your circumstances. You may be going through a normal day, thinking normal thoughts, and then something shifts inside you. A strange sense of dread settles into your chest, a heaviness creeps into your breathing, and an inner trembling begins that you cannot explain. It feels as though something invisible has stepped into the room with you, carrying an atmosphere that does not belong to you. This kind of fear does not behave like natural fear. Natural fear is connected to a threat, a risk, or a challenge. But unnatural fear rises even when everything is fine. It carries a spiritual vibration that your inner man recognizes before your mind understands it. You walk into a room and suddenly feel nervous. You lay down at night and your heart begins to race. You are surrounded by silence but feel overwhelmed by a sense of danger. These moments do not match what your physical eyes see. They belong to a realm beyond sight, a realm where spiritual pressure tries to imprint itself onto your emotions. This type of fear tries to settle into your atmosphere like smoke that you cannot see but you can feel. It grips you in a way that weakens your confidence and drains your inner strength. You may feel a tightening in your stomach, a sudden heaviness in your chest, or a shaking in your hands. You may feel watched, threatened, or unsafe without any physical reason. Your spirit becomes unsettled, and you start searching your surroundings for answers that do not exist. When someone attempts to send negative energy, manipulation, or witchcraft against your life, one of the first manifestations can be this sudden invasion of fear. It tries to break your inner stability because fear is an enemy to faith. You may notice that this fear arrives with patterns. For example, every time you start to pray, the anxiety rises. Every time you think about moving forward in your purpose, a sudden dread appears. You may feel panic at moments of peace. You may feel nervous when nothing is wrong. These patterns reveal that something spiritual is targeting your inner life. Fear is not just an emotion. It can be a spiritual attack designed to weaken your connection to divine confidence. When fear is unnatural, it seeks to overshadow your spirit, not just your emotions. It may also appear when you are about to step into something important. Right before a breakthrough, right before new favor, right before a decision that aligns with your calling, you may feel a surge of anxiety that tries to push you back. The timing exposes the source. Fear that appears when destiny is near is often fear sent to block momentum. It tries to make you retreat. It whispers lies to your mind. It magnifies imaginary threats. It distorts your perception of reality. It makes you doubt the very things God has already confirmed. This kind of fear also separates you from peace. Peace is not just a feeling, it is a spiritual condition. When that peace is interrupted without any external cause, it is a sign that your spirit is being targeted. You may feel restless even in safe environments. You may feel unsettled even in quiet moments. You may wake up suddenly in the night with a pounding heart, as if something has touched your spirit. You may sense an unseen presence standing near you, not in a way that comforts, but in a way that agitates. When fear arrives this way, it carries a spiritual fingerprint. Unnatural fear also attacks identity. You begin doubting yourself, questioning your choices, and feeling unworthy or incapable. The enemy uses fear to manipulate your thoughts, because a fearful person becomes easier to control. Fear discourages action. Fear weakens prayer. Fear disrupts discernment. Fear drains emotional energy. Fear tries to build walls inside the mind so that you cannot see clearly or feel freely. This is why sudden and unreasonable anxiety is not something to ignore. It signals that your inner peace is being disturbed by something beyond the natural. Another sign is when your emotions respond as though danger is present even when everything is calm. You may feel like something is about to go wrong even when nothing is happening. Your spirit feels tight, your breathing becomes shallow, and your mind begins to race. This fear tries to drive you inward, isolating you from spiritual confidence. It does not serve to protect you, but to paralyze you. It steals joy, interrupts sleep, and creates an atmosphere of tension that does not belong in your life. You may also notice that this fear does not lift easily. Normal fear fades when the situation changes. But unnatural fear remains even when the environment shifts. You may try to distract yourself, talk to others, listen to music, or move to another room, but the anxiety follows you because its source is spiritual, not physical. This fear carries intention behind it. It seeks to dominate your inner world, to weaken your faith, and to introduce spiritual instability into your life. Recurring nightmares and nighttime oppression are among the most unsettling indicators that a spiritual force may be trying to disturb your life. These experiences are different from ordinary dreams produced by stress or daily thoughts. They appear with intensity, consistency, and spiritual weight. They do not come once or twice, but repeatedly, as though something is trying to force its way into the quiet hours meant for rest and restoration. When darkness targets someone spiritually, the night often becomes the first battleground, because sleep is the moment when the body rests, but the spirit remains open and sensitive. These nightmares carry a different nature. They involve images, sensations, or encounters that feel heavier than normal dreams. You may see shadows, unfamiliar faces, threatening figures, or creatures that do not appear randomly. You may find yourself running, fighting, drowning, or being chased. You may hear voices calling you, whispering, or threatening you. You may dream of falling from heights or being trapped in a place you cannot escape. These dreams often leave you shaken, your body sweating, your heart racing, and your spirit unsettled. They leave an aftertaste that lingers long after you wake up, as though the dream followed you into the morning. Nighttime oppression can take even more direct forms. You may experience the sensation of something pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe. Some people describe waking up unable to move, as if invisible hands are pinning them down. Others feel the presence of something standing near the bed, silent, heavy, and watching. You may feel coldness in the room, hear sounds that do not belong, or sense movement in the darkness even when everything is still. These moments create fear, confusion, and vulnerability because they happen when you are at your weakest physically. When someone is targeted spiritually, especially through witchcraft, negative energy, or dark intentions, the night is often chosen as the doorway of attack. The enemy seeks to disturb your rest because rest strengthens your mind, restores your emotions, and renews your spiritual clarity. If your sleep becomes disrupted, your daily strength weakens. If your dreams become contaminated, your discernment becomes clouded. If your nights are filled with fear, your days become filled with anxiety. This is why nighttime attacks are strategic. They attempt to enter the subconscious and plant fear where faith should grow. These dreams often repeat themselves with patterns. You may see the same shadow, the same scenario, the same atmosphere. The repetition is not accidental. It is designed to wear down your resistance, to make you accept fear as normal, and to weaken your spiritual courage. You may also notice that these nightmares intensify whenever you begin to pray more, read the word more, or move toward a new season of breakthrough. The timing exposes the motive. The spiritual realm reacts when you move closer to your purpose. Another sign of nighttime oppression is waking up exhausted, even if you slept for many hours. Your body rested, but your spirit spent the night fighting. You may wake up feeling drained, foggy, heavy, or emotionally low. Your mood may shift suddenly in the morning, as though something attached itself to your spirit during the night. You may feel spiritually numb or disconnected from prayer. These symptoms do not match the amount of sleep you had. They match the intensity of the spiritual pressure you encountered. Sometimes you may wake up suddenly at the same time every night. This is not random. Repeated wake-ups at specific hours can be spiritual alarms. The early hours between midnight and 3 a.m. are times when the spiritual atmosphere is most active. If you find yourself waking with fear or panic at these moments, it may indicate that your spirit is detecting something approaching you in the unseen realm. Your inner man is alert even when your physical body sleeps. Nighttime oppression can also manifest through emotional responses. You may cry in your sleep, speak loudly, groan, or wake up in distress without remembering the dream. You may feel an emotional heaviness the moment you open your eyes, as if something drained your spirit. These responses reveal that something interacted with you while you were unconscious. You may also feel reluctant to sleep, afraid to close your eyes because the night feels unsafe. You sense that something waits for you when the lights go off. This internal resistance to sleep is a spiritual reaction, not a psychological one. Your spirit recognizes the atmosphere of oppression even before your mind interprets it. Recurring nightmares and nighttime attacks are not exaggerated feelings. They are real spiritual signals. When dreams carry darkness, repetition, intimidation, and spiritual weight, they indicate an intrusion from the unseen realm. When sleep becomes a place of struggle instead of peace, it reveals that something is attempting to disturb your spiritual foundation. Unexpected setbacks in health, finances, or relationships that appear suddenly and without logical explanation often indicate a spiritual interference pressing against your life. These setbacks are not the ordinary challenges people encounter in daily living. They come with unusual timing, strange patterns, and a pressure that feels heavier than normal circumstances. When multiple areas of life begin to break down at the same time, especially when everything was previously stable, it signals that something unseen is attempting to block the flow of blessing, progress, and peace. These setbacks often appear abruptly. You may have been experiencing steady progress, consistent harmony, growing finances, or improving health, and then suddenly everything slows down or collapses without warning. A door that was opening for you shuts unexpectedly. A relationship that was peaceful becomes tense without cause. A project that was successful starts failing in ways you cannot understand. Money that flowed freely begins to dry up. Opportunities that were certain disappear. These things do not unfold gradually. They strike quickly, as though something is trying to interrupt momentum. In your health, you may experience unusual symptoms that come out of nowhere. One day you feel strong and normal. The next day you feel drained, weak, or afflicted by pains or conditions that doctors cannot fully explain. You may go through a series of appointments, tests, or medical checks only to hear that nothing is wrong, yet your body tells you otherwise. The confusion between what you feel and what you are told reveals the spiritual nature of the attack. When the enemy targets your health spiritually, he seeks to weaken your energy, your focus, and your emotional stability. A weakened body often leads to a weakened mind, and a weakened mind becomes vulnerable to spiritual discouragement. Financial setbacks are another strong indicator. These are not the typical challenges of overspending or poor budgeting. These are sudden losses, unexpected delays, or unusual blockages that make no sense. Money disappears through strange expenses. Promised funds do not arrive. Sales fall without explanation. Business connections break unexpectedly. You may find that every time money begins to increase, something immediately comes to claim it. Even opportunities that seemed guaranteed may suddenly collapse. When finances begin to behave in patterns of loss or blockage, especially after seasons of blessing, it shows that something is interfering with your provision. Relationships, too, become affected. People who were once supportive may grow distant. Misunderstandings arise from nowhere. Conflicts appear without reason. You may feel tension around certain individuals who were previously peaceful. Friendships that once strengthened you may suddenly weaken or break. Family members may react in ways that do not match the situation. These relational disruptions are not random. They are designed to isolate you emotionally and spiritually. Isolation weakens resilience and interrupts the support that helps you stay aligned with your calling. One of the clearest signs that these setbacks have a spiritual root is when they hit all three areas: health, finances, and relationship, simultaneously or in close sequence. Natural struggles rarely attack in synchronized waves, but spiritual interference often does. The enemy understands that if he can weaken your body, drain your resources, and isolate your heart at the same time, he can distract you from purpose and drain your spiritual strength. These simultaneous pressures are not coincidental, they are coordinated. Another sign is when these setbacks arrive during moments of spiritual progress. Just when you start praying more, seeking God more, growing in your faith, or moving toward a destiny decision, the pressure intensifies. When you prepare to step into a new season, attacks on your health, finances, or relationships may suddenly increase. This timing exposes the intention. The enemy fears your next step and tries to suffocate the breakthrough before it fully manifests. Sometimes these setbacks come through cycles. You may experience a season of progress followed by a sudden crash. Every time you rise, something pulls you down again. This repeated rise and fall pattern is not natural. It is a spiritual attempt to exhaust your hope. The goal is to make you believe that progress is impossible, so you stop trying. These cycles often continue until you recognize the source of interference and confront it spiritually. You may also notice strange coincidences that do not match your logic. Appliances break at the same time. Unexpected bills arrive in clusters. Opportunities fall apart at the very last moment. People misunderstand you at the exact points where clarity was needed. Even minor inconveniences accumulate to create unusual pressure. These patterns reveal that the natural world is being influenced by a spiritual disturbance. You may also feel as though an invisible resistance is surrounding your steps. You attempt to move forward, but everything becomes difficult. What was once easy becomes hard. What used to flow becomes blocked. You sense that something is pushing back against you, not physically, but spiritually. That resistance is the hallmark of interference designed to steal momentum and keep you stuck. When setbacks in health, finances, and relationships come in unexpected ways, with strange timing, unusual patterns, and spiritual weight, they reveal that something unseen is trying to interfere with your movement, drain your energy, and block your progress. A sudden distance from prayer and spiritual hunger is one of the most subtle yet powerful signs that something spiritual is trying to interfere with your inner life. This disconnect does not happen gradually like the natural fluctuations every human experiences. It happens abruptly. One day, your spirit feels open, warm, and drawn to God, and the next day you feel cold, uninterested, or strangely resistant to the very things that once brought you peace and strength. It feels as though an invisible layer has come between you and the presence of God, not because you chose distance, but because something is pressing against the connection. This kind of spiritual dullness does not arise from tiredness, busyness, or emotional fatigue. It carries a unique heaviness that seems to pull your spirit downward. You may try to pray, but the words feel blocked or empty. You may open scripture, but your heart feels no response. You may attempt to worship, but your spirit feels numb. What used to stir you deeply suddenly feels far away. When spiritual hunger fades without any reasonable cause, it is often a sign that interference is targeting the place where your strength is formed. This disconnect can feel like a spiritual fog. You know you should pray, but you cannot find the desire. You know you should worship, but the motivation disappears. You know you should seek God, but another pressure seems to grip your mind and redirect your focus. This is not ordinary distraction. It is a kind of internal resistance that rises every time you try to approach the presence of God. Something inside you feels pushed back, as if a barrier has been placed between your spirit and your source. When spiritual interference is directed toward you, especially through witchcraft or negative intentions, one of its first goals is to silence your spiritual life. The enemy understands that if he can weaken your desire for prayer, he can weaken your power. If he can suffocate hunger, he can disarm discernment. If he can dull your sensitivity, he can interrupt your awareness of God's guidance. Your relationship with God is the foundation of your strength, and an attack on that relationship often appears as spiritual numbness, indifference, or heaviness. You may also notice that moments which once felt sacred now feel ordinary. The atmosphere of worship that once stirred your heart now feels flat. Words that once brought comfort now feel distant. Even hearing messages or spiritual teachings may feel harder to grasp. This shift does not reflect a change in the presence of God. It reflects a struggle in your ability to engage spiritually. Something is attempting to shut down your hunger, because hunger is what draws you deeper into the presence of God. This sudden spiritual distance can also create confusion. You may wonder why you feel disconnected. You may question your faith, your discipline, or your commitment, but deep inside, you sense that something is wrong beyond your own decisions. The lack of desire to pray feels unnatural, as though your spirit is being restrained from reaching upward. You may feel guilty for not praying, yet powerless to break through the resistance. This tension is a sign of spiritual interference pressing against your inner life. Another sign is that the disconnect happens at key moments. Whenever you attempt to step into prayer, a heaviness settles on your chest. When you begin to read scripture, your mind becomes unusually distracted. When you try to worship, your emotions feel locked. When you think about drawing near to God, a strange laziness or disinterest rises suddenly. These reactions occur not because your heart has turned away, but because something is fighting your spiritual movement. You may also notice an unusual attraction to things that drain your spirit. Activities that kept you spiritually alive suddenly feel unappealing, while distractions seem more appealing than ever. You may lose the desire to be in spiritual environments or with spiritually strong people. You may even begin avoiding the very practices that once protected you. This shift does not come from your character. It comes from interference trying to disconnect you from what strengthens you. The most revealing indicator is that your spirit feels dull but restless at the same time. A part of you knows that something is missing. A part of you feels that your heart is not where it used to be. A part of you senses that your connection with God is being tampered with. Even if you cannot explain it in words, your spirit feels the disturbance. The pull away from prayer is not natural. It is a spiritual strategy designed to weaken your foundation, drain your discernment, and silence your spiritual authority. When strange relational conflicts and sudden misunderstandings begin to rise around you without any clear cause, it is often a sign that something deeper is happening in the spiritual realm. Relationships that were once peaceful and steady suddenly feel strained. People who used to speak kindly now respond with irritation. Words are misinterpreted, intentions are doubted, and conversations that were once smooth now feel like walking on fragile glass. You begin to wonder, why is everyone suddenly reacting this way? Why do simple interactions feel so heavy? This is how the enemy works. He cannot steal your blessing easily, so he attacks the relationships God placed in your life to support, strengthen, and align you with his purpose. When witchcraft is directed against a person, one of its first strategies is to sow seeds of confusion and division. It seeks to isolate you. It tries to separate you from people who carry wisdom, prayer, encouragement, and spiritual covering. The enemy knows that when 2 or 3 gather in unity, heaven responds. He knows that where there is agreement, there is power, so he tries to break that agreement by creating unnecessary arguments, stirring emotional sensitivity, and twisting innocent words into sharp offenses. Suddenly, the people who love you seem distant. The ones who used to support you seem cold. You start feeling as if no one understands you, no one stands with you, and everyone is turning against you. These relational conflicts don't always show up loudly. Sometimes they appear quietly, small misunderstandings, subtle tensions, and silent walls. You sense something is off, but you can't point to any specific incident that caused the shift. That's because it's not natural, it's spiritual. Witchcraft attempts to cloud perceptions, making you feel misunderstood, overlooked, or rejected. When this spiritual pressure increases, people may start acting out of character. Thought patterns shift, patience thins, kindness fades, irritation rises. It becomes as if an invisible hand is pushing people into conflict and miscommunication. You may notice that even your closest relationships become vulnerable. Conversations feel strangely tense. Family members misinterpret simple words. Friends withdraw without reason. Colleagues become unusually critical or harsh. People begin to project negative assumptions onto you, assuming motives you never had. Sometimes they may even believe lies whispered into their minds by spiritual forces working to break unity. A sudden emotional coldness begins to settle in the atmosphere around you, and you feel it even before anything is said. This is a sign of spiritual interference, an attempt to fracture the connections that bring stability, encouragement, and spiritual partnership. Another sign is when conflicts erupt at the exact moment you step into prayer, fasting, or deeper spiritual commitment. The enemy is threatened when you grow. When you rise spiritually, darkness loses its grip. so it tries to distract you through relational turmoil. It sends confusion into your home, disagreements into your friendships, and tension into your workplace. The goal is to drain your focus and steal the peace that is necessary for spiritual clarity. You find yourself spending emotional energy on conflict instead of prayer, on frustration instead of worship, on misunderstandings instead of meditation on God's Word. You may also notice that even small issues explode into major arguments. A minor comment becomes a battle. A small decision becomes a war. People respond with exaggerated emotions or unusual levels of anger. You yourself may feel irritated more easily than normal. This is because witchcraft doesn't only influence others. It tries to influence you. It tries to stir emotional turbulence so that you react instead of discern. It pushes your thoughts toward offense, suspicion, or insecurity. It wants you to withdraw, shut down, or lash out. It wants to disrupt your sense of inner stability and cause you to see people through distorted lenses. Another manifestation is when you sense jealousy, hidden hostility, or silent competition rising from people who never acted this way before. The enemy uses envy as a tool to strain relationships. Whispered lies may enter their hearts, pushing them to view you as a threat rather than a blessing. Suddenly, they become distant, critical, or passive-aggressive. They may not even understand why their attitude toward you shifted so quickly. They themselves are unaware that spiritual forces are attempting to use them as instruments of confusion. You may also notice conversations that used to be open and free now feel guarded. People hesitate, withdraw, or communicate with suspicion. Trust begins to erode without any logical cause. The flow of connection freezes, and you feel as though you are navigating relationships through fog. That fog is spiritual. It is meant to block unity. It is designed to cut you off from encouragement, counsel, partnership, and love. This is how witchcraft weakens people, not by attacking them directly, but by attacking the relationships that carry their strength.